Welcome back to another mic check. It is very late right now because we just finished a 2-day Star Wars marathon so that we could give our opinions on the films very briefly prior to the release of The Last Jedi. And we're going to go in chronological order because that's how we watched them. And so, Mike, what do you think of The Phantom Menace?
Phantom Menace. I remember not liking it as a kid. I still don't like it. The biggest negative you could say is that it's boring, nothing happens. Who's the main character? I don't know what's going on. But a pro that I could also say is that the effects are good. It's what Lucas wanted. The action is good. One of the coolest saber fights and Duel of Fates is awesome. But other than that, it's weird.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's sort of what everybody really says about it is true. It's definitely my least favorite one. It's, you know, poorly paced, too much going on, so much plot having to do with the world and not the characters. We could go into how we could fix it, you know, all day, but I think
let's go on to episode 2.
I think that Attack of the Clones is better. It's the one that I watched the most aside from the original trilogy when I was growing up. Does not mean it's aged well. I think that one, it is longer, but somehow it seems shorter than Phantom Menace, I'll give it that. It has a couple of really good set pieces, but really what winds up dragging it down is the romance. I think the romance is crap. The only positive thing I can muster from it is that at least you have a dynamic. But all in all, really so close to being just as bad as Phantom Menace.
I agree, it's bad. But my pros that I can say that, yes, the relationships are better. Not the romance, oh god, that's the worst part about it. But it looks better, the sound is better, it has a better plot. That doesn't mean it's a good plot, but I like Obi-Wan's side story. His Jango fight is kind of cool, the Arena fight is kind of cool, but that's what it is. It's kind of cool, but it's not really there. It's not a good movie, but still better than Phantom Menace.
Yeah, so let's move on to Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. That was my favorite growing up, actually, even though Empire, we'll get to that. But pros, it's epic. It feels like the end of a trilogy. It's actually a great plot, but because of the prequels, it's already too late to be happening. But I love the beginning, I love the ending. The middle can be a bit draggy, but it's still great scenes, great emotion, and Execute Order 66 from then on, it becomes like an epic movie, but overall it's pretty great.
It's almost a good film, but there's too much of the other prequels dragging it down. It's still a very solid film. It takes each set piece, it progresses a type of story. It leads Anakin into sort of the journey that leads him to the dark side. Padme, I think, is a little bit one note, and she's really there to be like, what's wrong, Anakin, and really serve as a plot point.
The romance gets better here.
But it does get a little bit better, but that's only because there's less of it. The more you get with the romance and not Anakin's turn to the dark side, because conversations Padme has with other characters regarding Anakin's turn to the dark side, those are good scenes.
But him actually turning is like, so much. Oh, that's what we get.
It's very, and once again, him turning is very quick. There are a couple of holes you could poke in the logic of how he goes to turning to the dark side, but everything is kind of there. So moving on from the prequel trilogy, we get our first spin-off, which also kind of is a prequel, which is Rogue One. For me, this is a very different Star Wars film in a very good way. I mean, I feel like a lot of the pros about it are that it takes a grittier look at war, it has a really great ending, and pretty dynamic characters. But on that note, the weaker parts of it, which really drag it down to sort of a mediocre Star Wars film as opposed to a good or great one, is the fact that Jyn Erso, I think, really has no character. The first 45 minutes of the film could be so much better rearranged to serve the story.
I really liked it the first viewing, but each time seeing it more and more, I start to dislike more things, and I pick up like, oh, that's not that good, oh, that thread isn't that well communicated. But it looks great, the production I think is overall great. I think it has the best action in the franchise, like you said, the ending is fantastic. But the editing, the story, the characters are weak, very weak. The supporting characters actually steal the show, but the main cast, like, very weak. Fun, but not that good.
So now we move on to the original trilogy.
Ooh. New Hope is one of my favorites. It's a classic. Yes, you can say it's a bit dated, not because of visual effects, but if you compare it to like Empire, it's not as exciting as Empire. Every scene matters because everything is important. You discover new information, new characters, and it's just a great movie.
It's paced really well. It reveals a little bit of the world, maybe a little slowly, but it reveals a little bit of the world as you get through it. It's the typical hero's journey, but done in a very Star Wars type way. It's the one that started it all, that sort of provided that platform for which the films, upon which the films could get better. And I feel like I really can't say anything that bad about it because it's just a great film. It is Star Wars. It's the one that had that name before any of these other movies came about, and it deserves it. And now we move on to Empire Strikes Back.
Coming to your galaxy next summer.
This is objectively the best film in the franchise, with good reason. It takes Star Wars and puts it into a darker territory. It takes the heroes and the villains, puts them in more trying circumstances and more intriguing circumstances. You learn a little bit more about the characters and you learn more about where they're going. You really get to see the Empire shine in here, and you get to see how dark the universe is with them in power.
I totally agree. It's my favorite Star Wars movie. It always has been, always will be. We'll see. But I would say that if I really had to nitpick, you could say like, oh, a couple stuff can be taken out for here and there. But overall, it's a great movie. It can be, they knew what they were doing. It could be very metaphorical. It's very exciting. Every pace scene feels well made. It's just great. The next film is Return of the Jedi. It is actually my least favorite in the trilogy, but I'm not saying that it's a bad movie. My negatives, I want to start with that. I don't really enjoy the plot very much. I think that I start to love it with the last act, Luke meeting Vader. It's epic, it's awesome. But it's just weak before that. Like, you get campfire stories, you meet the Ewoks, and they're not my worst part, but the plot, they're just kind of going around, and it doesn't feel like it's a real dynamic. It's just kind of slowly flowing into something greater. But then that could be a positive too, where they're taking their time to building an amazing climax.
Yeah, well, on the other hand, Return of the Jedi is actually my favorite Star Wars film, and I think it manages to capture this emotion that I don't think necessarily needs an ironclad plot of The Empire Strikes Back, because when you watch a film, there are certain inexplicable things about a film that make you feel certain ways and make you remember, I don't care what happens in a certain way, but I remember why this is my favorite film. So now we move on to The Force Awakens. I personally think, you know, new studio, new director, new style, it worked. It still worked. It paid homage to the original trilogy enough, and I understand that it was different because you can tell, even though it's good, you don't have that George Lucas stamp on it. And even though the prequels were terrible, for some people, J.J. Abrams actually had a lot to prove, and I feel like I admire that because it was a new story with great characters, great action, and a great heart to it that almost served as a sequel, a remake, a reboot. It served as so many different things and succeeded as all of those things.
Oh, absolutely. Everything felt fantastic. It was fresh. The main highlight I could say is that it was pretty unpredictable. Yes, it could be New Hope remake, but it's really not because you don't know what these characters are gonna do. I loved it. A couple nitpicks here and there. For negatives, I would say that certain setups could be better paid off. A couple little reveals were better revealed here and there. A little too early and a couple too late. But it just feels overall great. I loved the story. I loved the characters. And you said it's the beginning of a new trilogy, so now we're going to set everything based on these characters who we love.
Should we go in chronological order and say what they are?
We
first,
should.
Or should we rank them?
But I just want to note that we also watched the movies in the theatrical editions.
But
you go first for your best to worst.
So that, I think, yeah, let's combine, we're gonna do best to worst, and while we say that, we're gonna say what we would give them.
When I left you, I was but a learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
I am very much like, flaws or no flaws, if a Star Wars film is great, and half of these Star Wars films are in my top 10 films of all time. If you grouped them into a franchise, they'd be up there. But if you're going to go through by singular movies, I hold them to a very high regard. So even though some are better than others, my ranking goes Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, Force Awakens, New Hope. And for all of those, even though obviously I like certain ones better, for me, they are all wait in line for them because they manage to capture the essence of what Star Wars is, and flaws and all, that's really what I want. Then as we go further down, Rogue One is probably next up. Rogue One followed by Sith. And those are pretty equal for me, where they're both sort of, you know, probably accept as a gift, and followed by 2 and 1. 2, I would maybe say a red box, and 1 I would say trash, crumble. Because it's still a Star Wars film, and I feel like just because it is a Star Wars film, people who are really big on the franchise, that's going to really matter to them. But what do you think?
No, that's a good list. Mine differs not as much, but
slightly.
Slightly.
Return of the Jedi's placement is really where yours differs the most.
Star Wars is in my top 3 favorite franchises, so they hold dear to my heart very much. So I want to say my ratings from best to worst and then what I would rate them. So right now it goes Empire Strikes Back, New Hope, Force Awakens, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace. Now I'm going to go up for the rankings. 1 is a trash, compact, ew. 2 is a trash, crumble, because you can forget about it. 3 is accept as a gift. Rogue One is red box. 4 is full price. 5 is, ooh, wait in line. 6, full price. And 7, I would also give a full price, maybe a high full price, but I would say Empire is the best. That's why it has a better ranking. But overall, they're pretty watchable. They're not really terrible. Even Phantom Menace has its moments, but they're still fun.
That's pretty much what we think. We're going to let you guys know what we think of The Last Jedi.
Yes.
Hopefully it's going to be up there in the top half of our films as opposed to the bottom half.
I'm so excited.
As usual, before you guys go see a movie, check it with us first. Thanks for watching. Bye.